Okay, right. So I realized the last video that I had recorded that was up on my channel, I actually got the dates a little bit mixed up and I was a few months behind. So I'm actually already at 2 years. I think it's just past 2 years. Doing like sort of immersion learning for German. And so I wanted to make a proper update, sort of encapsulating everything that's happened since I started. Thought it might be interesting to look back on. And I suppose for if there's anybody watching this that isn't familiar with like Refold or sort of immersion learning methodology, I don't know, the idea of it, I'll explain it a bit. Anyway, so what I thought I would do was just go through my timeline first. I'm not going to go really in depth into it because I have a lot of other videos that explain obviously a lot more in depth. But I have notes written out for most of the points on this, so I'll click into them quickly. If you want to read them, maybe pause the video and read them, but otherwise it would take too long. Anyway, so to begin with, I decided to start learning German after... Okay, so the reason I decided to learn German, for anyone who hasn't watched any of my other videos, is that I've always been like quite interested in... It sounds so dark, but like the Holocaust, and I used to read a lot of novels about like World War II time, like that kind of time period and stuff to do with the Holocaust, and I don't know, I just always had a bit of a fascination with it, and I would be listening to like audiobooks when I got a bit older, and whenever the narrators would read out the like place names, or I don't know if there's anything in German, I was like, oh wow, that sounds so interesting. I'd love to be able to like to pronounce that properly. I don't know, it was fascinating for me. And then at some stage, I don't think it wasn't 2018, it was 2017, I made a friend who's actually from Germany, and it was during the summer where I worked, and then that same person, she came back the next year, and the next year I was like, okay, I think I actually will learn German. This is exciting now, because it made it seem like real for somehow. You know, I was like, oh, this is a person, and she actually speaks German. It's like an actual language that's used, you know, it's not just, I don't know, you know, off in my, in the books that I was reading. So yeah, I made a really like a solid decision. I was like, okay, this is something I actually want to do. I had played around with, what was it called? Rosetta Stone. I think I had played around with Rosetta Stone like a few years before, a little bit with Spanish, and I'd done a tiny bit with German, but I was like not particularly, you know, taken with either one of them, and I wasn't serious about it, and I've never tried to actually learn a language before. I thought I was really bad at it, and I hated it in school. So for some reason I just decided to, and so I started off with like traditional stuff. For the first few weeks I was doing like YouTube videos and like very basic, like German has 3 genders, you know, that sort of thing. And then a few weeks into it I was like, right, well, if I'm serious, I'm going to go to a serious German class. So there's a Goethe Institute in Dublin, and I decided to go to that because it was, you know, not too far away from me. And I did that. So I didn't complete the entire A1 level. I did the first half of it, so they break it up into like into each level into 2 sections. And I did the first half of it, and it was fine. I enjoyed actually being in the group with other people learning German. I thought that was exciting. But I didn't actually like the class that much, so I decided to leave. And at some point during that, I discovered italki, and I don't remember if I was actually taking lessons while going to the Goethe Institute, but I must have been. I don't remember actually. But anyway, so I took lessons for about a good 6 months, I think. Yeah, about 6 months. Quite regularly. I did just like 1 a week, and again, like I didn't really know how to use the lessons. I could barely form like the past tense, trying to explain that I had gone to a cafe yesterday. I didn't know how to do that. I think the teachers I had were good, but it was just that I didn't know how to use the classes properly. It was less about the teacher and it was more about me. Like I was thinking I was doing a lot because I was reading a lot about learning, but I maybe spent a few hours a week doing something in German, like I had like complete German, and I had like a few other books that I was like going through, but again, I didn't really know what to do. And then at some stage I was listening to a podcast, I think it was the Actual Fluency podcast, and it was actually I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the guy who runs the Dreaming Spanish website, website, but YouTube channel about learning Spanish basically through immersion, through comprehensible input. And it was his interview on this podcast, and he mentioned AJAT, and I was like, what's that? So I went home and I looked it up, and I was like, oh wow, okay, this is intense, but I like it. And it really pulled me in. And so I came across one of Matt vs. Japan's video just about how to like use the website, how to go to the table of contents. So I did that. I spent a couple of days very what's the word? I don't know. I dedicated basically a couple of days to reading through the entire table of contents. I went to a cafe, brought my laptop, and I was like, right, I'm going to read through 3-4 articles now, and I read through, I might have skipped the ones on like Japanese specific stuff, but I read through the entire table of contents, and it really resonated with me. There was something about it, because everything I'd been doing up until then, I hadn't really been enjoying. Well, I'd been enjoying, but it wasn't working. I'd been at it for 8 months at that stage. I think it was 8 months, 9 months. And I was like, okay, this is something I can do. I actually got into it pretty quickly. About 2 weeks after finding it, I was, switched over all of my stuff. There had been one TV show that I'd actually just started, and I was like, oh no, I can't watch that in German, but I really want to watch it. And I was very torn. I was like, right, so I'm going to binge it in these 2 weeks, finish it, and then start fresh with just German things. So I think that's what I did. So what I did, I started with just a few TV shows that I'd already seen. Well, I started with Stranger Things and a couple of other things, and I was understanding not very much, like 40%. I think that's actually more than I understood. I remember thinking 20 or 30% of what the kids were saying. And then Love Alarm, which is an awful show, but it was the first thing that I'd ever watched in German that I hadn't already watched in English. And I was like, oh wow, I can understand, it's like a very simple show, but I can understand what's happening, and that was like really exciting. And then I did that again with another show, and I started with a pre-made deck, and it was an Anki deck, and it had sentences, and it was a little bit hard in the beginning, but I was able to do quite a lot of that a day. So I did 30 to 40 new cards a day for a while, which, thinking now, if I did 30 to 40 new cards a day, I would be on Anki for hours. But somehow it didn't take me that long. I remember it not taking me longer than 40 minutes, 50 minutes. I must have gone through them really, really quickly. Anyway, so that's what I would do there. And then 4 to 6 months, again, just rewatching stuff. I was watching some new stuff, found some YouTube channels. Okay, I was 3 hours of YouTube a day. I don't think I was watching really anything on Netflix at that stage. And then I started my first novel, which I didn't realise that I started it that early. So I finished it, what was it? Started October, finished November. So that was quite a small book. I really enjoyed it again. I had just enough understanding to be able to follow what was happening. There was a lot of things that I didn't understand though. And I started the monolingual transition with just putting some of my cards were made into monolingual. 7 to 8 months audiobooks. Went back to watching Parks and Rec and realised that I could actually follow it. I tried it before and it was far too much. Immersion, so I was doing 2.5 to 4 hours a day. It really kind of varied. And then with passive immersion, so passive immersion at this stage was, I think I had ripped the audio from things that I had watched a little bit. Like, I didn't do that religiously. I did it for some things. I did it for one of the Korean dramas that I'd watched that was dubbed. But then I also had like YouTube videos and stuff that I just put on a MP3 player. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I said I tried to watch Something in the Rain, but the vocab was harder. Yeah, it was harder than the previous one that I'd watched. So I tried One Spring Night, which I watched, and it was a lot easier. I've actually just gone back to Something in the Rain, like literally just in the last week, and I'm finding it quite useful because there's just enough vocabulary that I'm unfamiliar with that it's, there's stuff to look up. So that's cool. 9 to 10 months. So every now and again I went back and I did italki lessons. After 9 or 10 months, I had one lesson still left over with a previous teacher. It was in like a package I'd bought and it was about to expire, so I had to use it. And it was very obvious that I had improved quite a bit in the like 6 months, 8 months that I hadn't. Oh, it's been more than that. 6 months since my last lesson. It was quite an improvement. Like, she noted that like my pronunciation was better. I could actually speak. My vocabulary was obviously a lot bigger. Like, it still wasn't great, but it was a notable difference, which was cool to notice. And this was another fun thing that I started. So I have a few friends actually that are from Germany, and I was Skyping with one of them, and we had the ideas like, oh, why don't you speak in German and I'll just reply in English and we'll see how much I understand. And we did that for about an hour, and it actually worked pretty well. So it gave me the idea to try and do the same thing but with like a language exchange partner so that we could do it regularly. And I found a partner, and what is this, a year and 4 months ago? It's been a year and 4 months and we're still like Skyping each week, which is really good. It's really relaxed. It got a lot easier very quickly to keep up with everything that was being said. So that's one of the big things that I'm glad that I did, because it's been good. And now I also have like, somebody else that I actually know that's in Germany. Did I click on that already? Yep. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, not a huge amount going on. I think this month I just forgot to write something. So every now and again I would go back and I would have an italki lesson because I felt like trying to talk, and then very quickly I would be like, okay, well, I feel like that's enough. I didn't have this huge urge to talk really regularly. But every time I did do it, I suppose I was getting a little bit better, as I would express myself a bit more. This I think goes into a bit more about that. So around that 17 to 18 month mark, I did a mock B1 test. That was 8 months ago with an old teacher, and it went really well. I don't remember exactly what the marks were, but I got like 90% in it, and I didn't feel like it was particularly challenging. I looked at the B2 exam and I saw that was definitely a big step up, and that would be quite difficult. I honestly wonder if I did a B2 test now, would I pass it? I feel like I might, but I'm not sure. I'm sure like the reading and non-output parts of it would be quite easy. But it would be the speaking and writing parts that I feel I would really lack in, just because I haven't put time into it. Anyway, again, just forgot to write something for that month. Yeah. Then anything interesting here? I don't know, I was listening to audiobooks, contacted. Oh yeah, I was thinking about trying to book a B2 exam in November as like an accountability motivation device, because I felt I hadn't been doing enough at that point, so I wanted something to have to like work towards. I ended up not doing that. Oh yeah, I thought about like learning Spanish on the side for a while, as like, because I felt at this time I had so much time, like I was doing nothing. It was during one of the lockdowns. I was doing like a couple of hours of English teaching on italki each week, and that was pretty much it. So I had so much time, but I wasn't filling my entire day with German. I was like, why can't I get more done? So I thought maybe if I gave myself like a schedule, like I do this in the morning and then I do this and then I do this. So it's almost like if I had less available time, I would make use of my time better. That was my idea. I mean, I didn't end up doing that, but anyway, that was something. I think it would be a really interesting thing to do is to try and use the Dreaming Spanish YouTube channel, almost exclusively that, and see how long and how much I would be able to learn just from those videos. I mean, I don't really care about learning Spanish. I think it would be like just a cool kind of experiment to do, you know, if you just use those. How far would you get? Yeah, maybe it's something I'd do in like a couple of years, but not really too bothered about it right now. Did I click on that? Yeah, German Spanish. Okay, and then that's up to now, pretty much. Yeah, so nothing too much has changed, to be honest. When was it? From, let's say, November up until May, I didn't do, there was a while that I didn't do too much, and it was, if I did anything, it was like very free flow stuff. Like it was in that time that I basically stopped doing Anki. I stopped doing intensive study activities. I still like watch stuff in German, but I'm slowly getting back into the Anki stuff now. Okay, so that's my timeline roughly done. So it'll be 16 minutes. Okay. I think this might be a bit of a long video, so I should probably put in the beginning to speed this up. It'd be a bit quicker. Okay, anyway. So 2 years, what are we? Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the bits. I have stuff written out here to kind of go over what I think like my comprehension level is like, and that sort of things, like to go into where I'm at now. Yeah, this is something that I'd been thinking about for the last while, is because I hadn't been doing any like intensive immersion stuff. So what I mean by that is, do I have that? No, okay. What I mean by that is, if I'm watching something with subtitles, say if I hear or if I see a word that I don't know, I'll stop, I'll look it up, you know, make sure I understand it and go on and do that with, maybe not every single word, but at least do that a bit. That's something that I hadn't been doing. I just been doing completely free flow, you know, just watch it no matter if, you know, there's words that I don't understand, just let it completely wash over. And that's what I did that's what I had been doing for the last 4 or 5 months. But recently I got back into putting a bit more, you know, focused energy into things. But what I realized with those couple of months is that I didn't necessarily notice when there was new words, if that makes sense. And I think the reason I think it is because of how German works. So just for anyone who's like not learning German, it uses a lot of prefixes and like stems. I mean, that's kind of what I'm using the word. I don't know if that's exactly what it is. But so basically this word ausnutzen. Okay, where's that button? Yeah, here we go. So aus is the prefix, and then, or it's just a word by itself, but it's also a prefix, and then the word nutzen is to mean to use. You know, it's its own word. So you get like a verb, and then you get like another part that goes onto the front of the verb. So it looks like a word that you know, and especially if this is separated in a sentence, you know. The nutzen part could be in the beginning or the first, I don't know. They're separated, basically, separable verbs. So it doesn't necessarily sound like a new word unless you're paying more attention, which I obviously wasn't. Yeah, so you know the word aus and you know the word nutzen, and they're very common, so you wouldn't necessarily pick it out. But then a word like this that I came across earlier today while I was watching The Bachelor is schmunzeln. Schmunzeln? Yeah, so that's a word I was like, okay, I definitely don't know what that is, so I looked it up. But I think that's part of the reason that I actually don't notice that much when there's things that I don't fully understand, because I think I understand them, because I think I know what it means. Anyway, so that was just one thing. Okay, so my passive listening, so what I call passive listening is just I have wireless earbuds, just a little thing with wireless earbuds in them. That's always connected to my phone. It's always just sitting on my desk. So when I get up and do whatever, if I go for a walk, go down to make food, pretty much anything, I'm listening to a podcast. And the podcast that I've been listening to for the last couple of months, I think, is Herrengedeck. I need to work on my pronunciation. I'm not 100% good on it, but it's close enough. Anyway, so this podcast, and I really like it. It's really good, but that's pretty much all that I listen to. And for all these things, I'm using, like, that's his level 5. I'm using the model, what do we call it? Like the comprehension scale model for Refold. So most of my things are level 4 or 5. So 5, I'll just read through it real quick so you can get the majority of the ideas expressed, but there are details that you can't quite make out. You have to refer or rely on context to make out words, blah blah blah. So level 5 is more comfortable, so you can understand close to everything. So that's the main thing that I'm taking from level 5, is that you understand close to everything, but some, subtle nuances lost. So you don't have trouble following along with what's being said, but some of the cleverness or blah 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 goes unnoticed. You can identify, like, if I don't understand something, I can pick out the word that I don't understand, or I can pick out the part of the sentence that I don't, and I can figure out what it means. So it's like that. And then it says, this is the bit that I don't 100% agree with. It says, at this level there is still significant effort associated with the act of comprehending. I don't feel like I put significant effort into listening, into understanding. Like I know if I put more effort, if I put more like focus, I might understand like a little bit more, because I'd be thinking like a sentence just gone by. I would think about it for a second and be like, oh, it meant that, if it didn't, instantly click. But I don't feel like I'm sitting there being like, oh, this is so much effort. It's pretty, I just sit there and I listen. Anyway, so that's what I'm going off of. What's not I meant to click on? So the podcast, I'm feeling that's like level 5. Now, to preface all of this, that's not to say that there's not words that I don't know. There's so many like seemingly common words or just regularly used words that I don't know. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm, understanding absolutely everything and I barely come across new words. Like, that's far from it. But what I mean by like understanding close to everything at this level 5 comprehension is that what I have written here, unknown words don't usually make the general meaning unclear. So if there's a word that I'm not, like, most words I'm just unfamiliar with. I've heard them before and I have like a vague understanding of how they're used. That's the thing that I've noticed a lot. I'll hear a word a lot and I'll understand like, okay, well, it's used to mean something like doing this, it's like a doing word in a certain context, if that makes sense. So it's nothing that will like confuse me about the meaning of the sentence, but I wouldn't 100% be certain on exactly what the definition for the word is, if that makes sense. Anyway, and another thing that I think is pretty good is that I don't have trouble like hearing or parsing what's being said. So I can hear pretty much everything. Like, if I were to sit down with this podcast and if there was a word that came up that I didn't understand, I'd be fairly confident that I would be able to type it out and look it up, or if there was a phrase I didn't understand, I can hear it, I just don't know what it means. So I think in that sense, like, my listening skills are pretty good. So yeah, it's just a matter of unknown vocabulary, I think, is the main thing. Unknown vocabulary, and then like idiomatic phrases, or just sort of phrases that the meaning isn't, immediately obvious, things like that. Another thing, like, I really like this podcast. Like, it makes me laugh quite a lot, and I just really enjoy listening to it. It's one of those things. It's like, if someone were to tell me, okay, India, you don't have to, not that you don't have to, but India, you're not learning German anymore, you can stop trying to learn new words and stuff like that and whatever, I'd still listen to this podcast. I like it, that's what it's like with a lot of the stuff I watch or I consume. It's like, I just like it. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm definitely missing nuances, wordplay. I can only imagine all of the things that I'm probably missing out on. And little cultural references. I'd say that's something in this podcast. But yeah, it's not like super obvious that like, oh, I'm always lost about what they're talking about and anything. That's fine. So that's mainly what I'm watching. There's another one. What was I listening to before? Oh shoot. There's another podcast that it had been my like regular listening to podcast. Gefühlte Fakten, that's what it was. So I listened to that podcast the same way I listened to this one there's a fly. I've been listening to that for a couple of months. I would assume most of what I've said for Herrengedeck is the same for Gefühlte Fakten. I feel like Gefühlte Fakten might be slightly harder sometimes, but I don't remember. I haven't listened to it in a while, so I'm not sure. Anyway, and then on to stuff that I'm actually watching. So, over the last couple of months, pretty much since this show, Princess Charming, started, I sort of gotten into watching reality TV in the sense of, like, I've just watched The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. And these are shows that I never, like, would have watched in English. I thought they were stupid. The people that watch them, I was like, you're wasting your time. Why are you watching these? This is so silly. But I got into watching Princess Charming through a YouTuber that I watched. She did like, I don't know, I think I mentioned her in other videos. What's her name? Annikation. That's the YouTube channel. And she does like funny parody, like commentary summary things on, she's done it on Princess Charming, but also on like Love Island and shows like that. So I would watch her videos because she's like kind of making fun of it. It's like a parody. Anyway. And that's how I got into actually watching Prince Charming, which was really sweet. It's a really sweet show. And then I got into watching The Bachelor, and then I got into watching The Bachelorette because my friend that's living, like my German friend, also watched those shows, so it was like a thing for us to talk about. So I've been watching a lot of that recently. I've watched a couple of seasons, and my understanding of that is, I'd say it's pretty good, but I've noticed there definitely are things that I've missed. In hindsight, I hadn't realised I had missed something, but I had. So, I feel like I've said level 4/5 because it goes up and down depending on the situation. So, in like the more like formal situations when the people are like sitting down being interviewed, it's easier to understand what they're saying. Maybe I don't understand the words they're saying, but then there's other situations where people are just like sitting around like in the villa just having a chat with each other, and they're mumbling and they're kind of talking quietly and they're laughing, and it's sometimes like a lot of people talking together. Those situations are a bit harder. But for the most part, I don't feel like I've missed anything big. Like there's nothing big or important that I think I missed. It's like little things. Yeah, so I think I'm probably missing like the nuances of like a specific word choice, and that's just something that will come with time. Like there's nothing I can do about that right now. I've already talked about that. Yeah, and to do with these like reality shows, there's tons of content on YouTube to go along with them. So it's just a lot more stuff to watch. So it's great. So I've gotten a lot of like so many hours of like immersion stuff with just these shows. Okay, and then how to sell drugs online fast. This is something that I noticed even when I was watching the earlier seasons, but the dialogue in this show, there's a lot of it, and it's pretty fast. And I noticed that this is one of the few circumstances that I actually can't parse what's being said. Like, I listen to it and I don't know what was just said. If I read it, I would probably understand it better. But it's actually definitely a harder show, so parts of it are definitely more level 4 than they are 5. So I understand less of how to sell drugs online fast than I do watching The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. It's sort of difficult. Okay, but then on the other end, there's the show Atypical, which I'm watching, the dub of, and I understand, close to everything in that. And I've rewatched it recently with someone else in English, and I noticed there was a few things that I hadn't picked up on. Nothing big again, it's just a few things people had said in certain situations. I was like, oh, that's what they were saying. Or that's that one line that they said that, I didn't catch. And it's it's not important, but it's I don't know. There's just a few things that I noticed that I did miss. So I said if my English comprehension was 100%, my German was between 95 and 98. So it was pretty high. But again, there's certain words that I missed. There's expressions that I still don't know. And I noticed another thing is I can't recognize the tone of language in German. You can recognize someone's tone in their word choice in English, but I can't do that in German. And there are parts of the show that have science and biology terms, so I've just sort of not worried about those because it's not something I need to worry about. Easy German, and I do listen to the podcast of that. Not as much anymore because I have the other one, but the videos. I don't watch them very often, but I did watch one there earlier today. This one, Do Germans Love Rules? And so it's a 10-minute video, and I marked every time there was either a word that I didn't know, or there was a word that I couldn't hear properly. I don't know what they said. So maybe if I'd had subtitles, I would have understood what they said. But so either one of those situations, I marked when that happened. And so that happened 10 times out of a 10-minute video. To give an idea of how often I don't understand things. And I suppose you can go and watch that video to gauge what sort of language was being used in it, but again it's a very everyday stuff. It's nothing particularly, I don't know, anything. And then I think I mentioned this already, Something in the Rain is a show I've gone back to, and with the subtitles I can understand. It's kind of level 5, I think. Maybe a little bit lower, because there are words that I do need to look up, but I find, again, I had found with watching the other show, I don't think I mentioned it, but the show I watched before this, Spring, what was it called? Something to it, Spring? I don't know, there was another Korean drama that I watched, and I found it was really, really good for mining sentences, because it was subtitles. It was really good, and I'm finding the same thing for this show. I'm not mining out of them, but I'm looking things up, and it's really good. So I'm gonna stick with that now for a while, and I'm even noticing, only having gotten back into that sort of stuff for a week or so, that there are words that I've looked up that I've then noticed in other things. And that hasn't happened in so long because I haven't been looking up words. And that used to happen all the time during the first year and a half, maybe, year and a bit, when I was doing a lot of Anki, doing a lot of intensive stuff. That would happen all the time. And then I stopped doing that, and obviously, I wasn't learning that much. I actually don't think I could have learned so much more in the last couple of months if I had been able to do that more intensive work. But I'm glad I'm getting into it again. So that's really good. And another little thing that I've kind of been doing is doing study with me style, but I'm saying study immerse with me streams. They're unlisted, so they're not going to come up in I hope they're not actually going to come up in subscription stuff, because it's just an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour stream of me watching something. There's no video, there's no audio of the show, so it's not like you can watch along with it. That's not what it's for. My idea behind that was similar to like a study with me video, is that if you have 2 hours to sit down and do your immersion, that you stick on, a study with me video. It's sort of like company in a sense. I don't know, I've gotten into study with me videos in the last couple of months, and I find they're kind of useful to kind of keep you a little bit on track. But then also for me doing them, because I'm streaming, I'm like, well, I can't just go off and start watching stuff in English, because like there's proof that I was, supposed to be immersing. So it's like an accountability thing for me a little bit. So I was just gonna make like a playlist of a couple of videos of that if anybody's interested. Again, it's unlisted, but there's a playlist with the unlisted videos in them. That makes sense. I've only done like one so far. Anyways, that's that. Oh my goodness. Okay, 35 minutes already. Whew, okay, I think we're nearly done. So reading, thing about reading, I don't do it very often. I don't know, I'm trying to get more into reading. It's hard to work into a habit for me at the moment. But my comprehension for reading, so these are the 2 books that I'm reading at the moment. Eine kurze Geschichte der Menschheit, which is, Sapiens. I think I have the book in English. Yeah, it's Sapiens. And I'd expected that to be a lot more difficult, but it's actually not. I have it on my Kindle, so I can like look up words, but the language in it is very accessible. And I think that's probably why the book itself is so popular, like in English as well, is because it's not written complicatedly. It's, fairly simple enough. Obviously there are like terms for certain things that maybe are complicated, but I've been able to read that, and I've been really enjoying reading it. Again, not as difficult as I expected, and I wouldn't necessarily need the dictionary to like follow it. Like I could just read it without the dictionary, but it's nice to have. So I'm reading that on my Kindle, and then the other book that I'm reading is a physical book, which is nice. And again, this is like a bind up of the first 3 books. As Hitler das rosa Kaninchen stahl. So it's when Hitler stole Pink Rabbit. I think they actually made a movie of it. I think there's a German film that literally just came out this year or last year. Yeah, and it's got one of the actors from Dark. I can't remember the guy's name. Nichols. I don't remember. Anyway, but I enjoy that. I enjoy this book. I sit down and read it every now and again. I'm getting a little bit more into reading. But again, I don't do any lookups with that book because it'd be so much effort. But it's also not 100% necessary. I rarely get like lost or confused in this book. There are words that I don't know. There are unfamiliar words on every single page, probably multiple of them. But it's not enough to get confused about what's going on. I do pick up certain words like after they've been used a few times. If it's a noun, sometimes I'll figure out what they're talking about, like things like that. So it's good. I just need to dedicate a bit more time to building that habit. And then Anki Immersion. So yeah, like I said, I stopped using Anki months ago. I think I stopped adding cards, and I was still doing reviews for a few months. And then, when did I actually stop using it? November? Maybe before November? I don't remember exactly. Just didn't use it. And to be honest, I don't think I'm going to ever get back into using Anki the same way I did before, which is a little bit of a pity because it's so useful, but I just don't see that happening. Yeah. So what I've done now, which I think will kind of compensate somewhat, is doing that sort of more intensive subtitle reading lookups, basically just doing lookups while I'm watching stuff. And what I've also done, it's like a little experiment. So I got the first episode of the new season of How to Sell Drugs Online Fast, and I made an Anki deck of that. I went through and I kept all of the cards that had unknown or like new words on them. So I think out of, how big was the deck? Maybe 200 or 300 cards, and then out of that I kept maybe 70, 80. I'm not sure. But I went through and I did all those. I put monolingual definitions on them like I usually would have. And I had that as like one deck. And I think I went through all the new cards over like 2 or 3 days, and then just sort of have been very sporadically repping them. But I also put the audio of that on my phone, and I listened to that on repeat a few times. And I think like doing that is quite helpful, but again, I don't know if it's something that I'm going to do regularly, but I can definitely tell that it is helpful, that sort of intensive study of one thing and then also a lot of repetition of it is good. But yeah, so I've been doing almost exclusively free flow immersion, which is like no lookups, no just sitting there and just doing nothing except just like watching it. That's the vast majority of what I'd been doing. Okay, so on my time, so how much have I been doing per day on like average? So I think so I have my thing here. This is sort of a newish sheet for 4.5 months, nearly 5 months. No, not 5. Anyway, so these are the averages of passive immersion and active. So that means like if I've been sitting down watching Netflix, YouTube, but that's also including all the podcast listening that I do on like my little headphones. So you can kind of see there was a drop off of doing a lot around June, July. Yeah, it wasn't. No, these are the wrong. What? Oh, I wasn't using this. Okay, I see. August. Okay. Sorry, I forgot I switched sheets. There was probably not much going on in January at all. January, February, March, probably not too much. But yeah, so you can see the last weekish, more than a week, I was really, doing a bit more of a push. I was like, right, let's do all German all the time. Let's go back and just do actual AJAT style stuff. So I made a lot more of an effort to really just not watch stuff that I would watch in English, because I'd slipped a bit back into the habit of having, okay, I'll open my English, YouTube account, and there's just certain things that are really only available in English, and they're just really good, and I was just getting really into watching them again. So I decided, no, I'm gonna get a bit more effective with my time. Anyway, so I've brought over the numbers from my other sheets to give like totals and things. So my total hour of reading is 35. Is pretty low. Listening 1,125, passive 600, and then that's the total. Yeah, so that's over, let's say 2 years. It's 2 years and a month and a half, so it's basically 2 years. Yeah. See, I don't want to discount the passive listening that I do, because it's not like I don't do background listening. That's not something, I don't have stuff on when I'm not paying attention to it. I'm always listening, at some point, at some amount of like attention to stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so this gives like averages of what I would do a day. So I usually get between, so that was quite low that month, but 2.5 active hours a day. That's sort of the average that I would get, and then another 2 hours of podcasts. So I sort of stopped saying passive listening because I really just listen to podcasts. Another, usually about 2 hours of that a day. And then when I was doing Anki, that's actually weird that I have Anki in there at all. My Anki stats would have been a lot more accurate back when I was actually doing it. I mean, I could go in and look at it now, but yeah, I did like when I was actually doing Anki, I regularly did for the bulk of the time. I did like 10 new cards a day. Sometimes it was 15, sometimes it was 5. I did, when I was doing sentence mining from that Korean drama, I did 5 cards from that, and then, did I? I'm not sure. At some stage I was doing 5 mind cards, and then I was doing 5 cards from a book that I had imported into Anki. And that worked pretty well. So for a lot of the time it kind of went between like 5 and 15. Sometimes it would be none, sometimes it would be more, but it was around that, like quite regularly for a good year. Okay. So this is my breakdown of what I've been doing for the last while. So here, that's on my listening. This is not my sheet. I didn't make it. I don't remember exactly who shared it, but it was in the Refill Discord server. I'll try find a link and I'll put it in the description. Because I like the sheet. I think I changed it a little bit, but for the most part, this is how it was, shared. So all this sort of stuff was. Oh, that's something else. Yeah, like someone made all this. This isn't me. I'm not that into Excel. But anyway. So this is like a weighted average. So how did I have it? 1.5? I don't remember. Basically, I weighted the passive listening, the podcast listening, slightly lower. Because my attention isn't always that high. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of the breakdown. I usually get around 2 hours of podcasts, and then, yeah, like I mentioned, I've been listening to audiobooks every now and again. There's a while I was listening to a lot of it, about there. I use BookBeat for audiobooks. If you use the Gefühlte Fakten promo code, I think it's just bookbeat.de/Fakten, and you get like a month free instead of like a 2-week trial. So it's pretty good. So I've been getting some trials for the last while. Anyway, so the audiobooks have been good. Yeah, I think that's sort of it. Did I have much else? Timesheets, output. Okay, this is getting far too long, so I'm gonna try go through it a bit faster. So output, basically, I have a lot of gaps. I don't really feel like I want to start properly outputting because, I don't have like a good enough basis. Like my footing, for me, isn't good enough to want to regularly do that. And do I have any water? And yeah, it's just not a huge concern of mine, to be honest. I'll talk about it later, but I'd like to use this year to get as much input and try get to the stage where I'm at a good stage for naturally outputting, speaking, but I don't have a huge desire to go around talking to people. Pretty introverted, so it kind of works well. Yeah, every now and again I have a few minute conversation in German with my language partner. She's very good, she's very encouraging. She's like, do you want to speak German today for a few minutes? And most of the time I'm like, nah. Every now and again we do for a few minutes. But we had a chat the other day for about 20 minutes, and I thought it was interesting. She was very surprised that I used the word glücklicherweise. I think I said that right. And I thought that was quite funny. I don't know whether that just goes to show how basic everything else I was saying, that using that seemed out of place or something. I don't know. But I thought that was quite funny. But anyway, when we do speak, she always says I don't have any trouble understanding anything you're saying or anything you're trying to say. It's what you do say is for the most part correct. Obviously it's not perfect, and I do mess up. But I think it's not as incorrect as I think it is. I think that's what it is. I've had a few people say that to me. It's it's not as bad as you think it is. Anyway, sum this up pretty quickly. I've had a little bit better time with writing just because you have more time to think about it. Things that I haven't gotten down yet. Well, there's a lot of things. But something I'm starting to make a point of making more notice of now is how the articles change for different cases. So, like die becomes der sometimes, which is initially to me I remember when I first found out about that, I was like, that makes no sense. Why on earth does that make sense? How does feminine become masculine? I mean, it's fine now, but I'm just making more note of, like, I think is that the dative case, and then is it? No, it's not. Accusative. I don't know the names of the cases. Anyway, but I'm starting to take a bit more note of the other case, the one dame. I don't know, that one, and a few other things. I don't know the grammatical names for all these things. I'm making a bit more effort to take note of those. And I don't know a lot of the genders for a lot of the words that aren't really basic words. Like der Tisch, das Mädchen, die Flasche. Is Flasche die? I have to look that up now. Shoot. It's a bit embarrassing. This is what I mean. I'm not like confident in stuff like that. Yeah, die Flasche. So it'll take a little bit of time to work all that in. That's that. Okay, so for future stuff. So I'm starting a new college course in September 2021. So in a few weeks. And that course has, luckily, cool, there's only two options. And there's the two options for Erasmus are one in Stuttgart, and then the other one is in somewhere in Turkey, Istanbul. So like, cool, there's an option to go to Germany there's a 1 semester option, or there's for the whole year. I probably wouldn't do the whole year. But anyway, so that will be in the second year of college, which would be September 2022. So like I said before, this means I have a year between now and then to like really improve, to get to the stage where I could socialize okay in German. The course that I would be in, the one in Germany, is actually taught through English, so that like I wouldn't need German for like the actual academic part of it. But it'd be nice to be able to go there and actually, use the German. Okay, and then another really little thing, I looked into the Goethe Institute again recently. They have like online assessment tests now, which is kind of cool. So I was like, maybe I'll just do that. It's not like the normal free one. They do call you and you have a bit of a speaking thing with them. I thought that would be interesting to do, because I noticed that they actually have their normal like A1, A2, whatever classes, but they also have like, I think they're called speciality classes. I'm not sure. They have conversation classes. That seems like possibly a fun thing to do. I'd see what's going on, but maybe something to do in, not now, but like in a while. And then they also, like this, the next thing I'm mentioning is like way later on, but they have a German literature class where they go through, like Goethe, I'm not even saying that correctly, Goethe, what are they? Stille? What are the big German authors? I've forgotten them now. Anyway, they go through German literature, but it's like a C1 thing. But one of the friends that I have, I met her in Ireland because she was doing an internship in the Goethe Institute. So she's learning to be a German teacher. And she is German, but she was in Ireland in the Goethe Institute. Anyway, so I met her, but she sat in on a few of the classes, and she's saying it's really interesting actually in the C1 class that they were doing literature. So I assume it's probably similar to like an English class I would have taken in school. We would have been studying, an author, classical, like not classical, but like literature. So like that might be a cool thing to do. What do I have? Continue doing this, more intensive immersion. Yeah, because I want to be able to talk properly when I go to Germany. If I go, I mean, it's not certain. It's, we'll see what happens, but it's a possibility. Anything else? This is getting very long. Okay. Yeah, I don't think this is one of the things I think it would take me living in Germany, I think, to fully get, is that I don't actually always notice when people are using du or sie. I just thought about this the other day because the podcast Hängedeck that I'm listening to, they started talking about that, and then they suddenly started like sitzen each other, whatever. And I was like, oh, that doesn't sound weird to me because I'm not into it enough, if that makes sense. So that'll just take time. Also starting to get a feel for reflexive verbs, when to use sich. Just loads of little things like this. It's like I get them. I know how they're used. I know why they're used. And I understand when they're used. But because my mind is probably still going through some sort of English when I'm making a sentence, I don't know. It'll just take some time. Okay, so that's actually everything I wanted to say. Yeah. So fingers crossed that everything goes well with the college stuff and that my immersion hours, they will take a hit. I know they will take a hit, and that's fine. Hopefully if I am able to keep up with the slightly more intensive stuff and actually keep with it, I'll be able to keep making progress. Yeah, it'll probably just take a while to get used to a different schedule. And that, yeah, I suppose the only other thing I would think to do an update for, I suppose in 6 months, and see if all that's still holding up, how being back at university is. And yeah, I suppose the next stage is pushing past that like level 5 comprehension in more areas. I know on the like refill roadmap thing, it kind of says once you've got level 5 in like slice of life stuff, that you could then move on to doing like stage 3 output, like preparation stuff. I think I technically could do that, but I don't know. It's I kind of have a bit of an issue with being comfortable like speaking, and like my friend that I do the language exchange with, they're kind of just friends now. She's nice. She's always encouraging me. She's like, we could speak a little bit German. And if you're gonna go to college in Germany next year, you're gonna have to be able to talk to people. So I'm always weighing it between, am I actually like, do I just need to get more input, and how much of it is me just having like inhibitions, Yeah, but that's something I've always like struggled with a little bit, so that's nothing new. Anyway, this is far too long. Awfully sorry. Hopefully that was of use. If there's anything I haven't explained properly or questions that people have, just leave them in the comments. I usually reply to all the questions. And yeah, I suppose another 6 months. And then we'll see how things are. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end this now before it's officially 1 hour. Okay.